Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about Forest Shuffle strategies. There's a lot of strategies in Forest Shuffle, and if you're new to this game, then you might not know a lot of the cards and how they function with other cards. So this is mostly to help new players understand several different strategies in this game. Now, there's 8 different strategies that I've noticed, at least, that are fairly powerful. Now, while that may be the case, one strategy might not be powerful enough on its own, so 2 of them might need to be worked on at the same time. You might want to focus on one strategy, but then secondary, you want to try to focus on another strategy as well, and combine them into one big, basically forest, if you will. So that's what this is going to be about. This and the next several videos, it's going to be about focusing on what cards work obviously best, obviously. So let's get started with the first strategy. Now, of course, while a lot of the other videos aren't going to be focused on trees because they're not strategically for trees, that doesn't mean that obviously you're still going to need to play trees. Of course, you're still going to need still need to play trees in all of the strategies because you just can't have a forest without trees. But if you're going the big forest strategy, you're going to be focusing on mostly trees. And so let's get started with the big forest strategy. Now, the best tree for the big forest strategy is the sycamore tree, because while it's fairly expensive to play, it's going to give you 1 point for every tree you have. So if you have 10 trees in your forest, which is most likely going to be the case if you're going that route, then this is going to give you 10 points. And if you can get more than one sycamore tree, then that's going to give you even more points for all your trees. So this is the best and main tree that would work with that strategy. Now, one of the other things that will work well with this strategy is this carpenter bee, this violet carpenter bee. If it's linked to a tree, which obviously has to be linked to a tree, but the tree it's linked to, it basically copies that tree and becomes the tree. So, for instance, if it was attached to this tree, the sycamore tree, then that would mean that this bee is a sycamore tree, and even that includes for scoring purposes. So if you scored 10 points with the sycamore tree, then you would score 10 points for this bee as well. That's powerful. Of course, that means the bee would work well with other trees in this strategy. One of those trees is the horse chestnut tree. The horse chestnut tree here is going to score you 49 points if you manage to get all 7 of them. Obviously, you can have more than that, but you're not going to get extra points for more. Now, there's 11 of these particular trees in the game, so it's a good chance you'll get the majority of them for the majority of the points that you could potentially get. But they are a cheap tree to play as well, so if you can get some horse chestnut trees, this would be the second best tree for the big forest strategy to have. And if you're having trouble getting those horse chestnut trees because other players are using them too, then getting yourself a violet carpenter bee, if you can, could potentially help you because it would count as a horse chestnut tree if it was attached to it like this. So if you had, let's say, 6 horse chestnut trees in your forest at the end of the game, but you couldn't get that 7th, but you had this guy attached to this, then basically he would count as number 7, and so you'd get a whole lot more points if that was the case. So the bee is a good one, of course, to have. But besides horse chestnut trees in your forest, another good tree in your forest that you could have is the linden tree for the big forest strategy. Now, on their own, they're only worth 1 point, linden trees. So most players will not go for these trees because they're not worth much unless you have the most linden trees. Then each of them are 3 points. Even still, that's not super powerful. But if you have a lot of linden trees and you weren't able to get a lot of these trees and you were only able to maybe get one of these, then this is a good tree to go for the big forest strategy. Now, obviously, the violet carpenter bee would work well here because it could be considered a linden tree for scoring purposes as well. So that's another reason why this bee is a good one to have as well, because it is pretty powerful. It works really well with all 3 of those trees, but of course you're going to want to have as many trees as you can, but these are the 3 main ones. If you can get yourself some birch trees, they're free to play, and you get to draw a card, but they're only worth 1 point. But still, that would help with the sycamore trees anyways. Having lots of these is still a valid strategy for the big forest strategy. Now with that said, there are some other cards that work well with this strategy, one of which is this mushroom here. It's expensive to play, but if you can get this played early, assuming you can find it, because there's only 2 of these in the entire game, every time you play a tree, you'll get to draw a card. So this is going to help you, obviously, draw lots of cards and maybe potentially focus on some other strategies, as well as trying to get as many trees as you possibly can. It could potentially be very powerful, especially if you get that early in the game. Now, the other cards that work well with this strategy, you don't necessarily have to get them in the beginning of the game for them to be good, because they're just going to score you based on certain things. Moss is one of them. If you have at least 10 trees in your forest, moss is going to score you 10 points. So if you can get some more moss, more than 1, maybe 2, under some trees, that could potentially get you a lot of points as well and help with the big forest strategy. Another good card that would work well with this strategy, sorry about the shake, another good card is the Great Spotted Woodpecker. This is something for you to put on top of a tree because, like I said, you want to try to utilize your forest as best as you can. And so if you can have something to put onto your trees as well as under your trees, like the moss and that mushroom, then you're going to want to have something on top as well. And this is probably the best bird you can have in the big tree strategy. The best card that can go on top of a tree in the big forest strategy anyway, because it can give you 10 points if you are the forest that has the most trees. So that's powerful. That could give you a lot of points. If you could get more than one of these woodpeckers, even better. But that's another card that would work well with this strategy. And then I'll mention one more. This is kind of a weak card for this strategy especially, but if you can get some blackberries, they're free to play at least, and can give you a couple of points if you have, well, the blackberries and the moss, for instance. You could get a few points at least if you had both of these cards, the moss and the blackberries. But yes, that's another potential card that would work well with the big forest strategy. So that's basically how you would score for the big forest strategy. Hopefully, this was an informative video for you, and hopefully you'll like the next videos after this. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the next video.